Here are the cut pieces for the dress shirt collar. There are 2 pieces for this stand, cut in this pattern on the fold. Make sure to mark center front and leave seam allowance. 2 pieces of the collar marked with this pattern on the fold. 1 piece of stiff stuff marked in the shape of the stand with no seam allowance, and enough tricot to cover half of the collar pieces. Lay the stiff stuff piece into one of the stand pieces on top of Teflon paper or a pressing cloth. Lay the fabric wrong side up with the stiff stuff band and covering one of the collar pieces and press in place. Remark the stitching lines if necessary. The center front lines on the band will be important. Cut it out, leaving 1/4 to 1/2 inch of seam allowance. Pin and stitch the collar pieces together on the outside edges. Leave the neck edge open. When bagging out pointy corners, it can be helpful to stitch down one length, stop just shy of the actual corner, put 1 stitch going across, and then continue. Trim all the seam allowance down. Get quite close at the point. A point presser can be helpful for this. Use a knitting needle or something with a blunt point to help turn the corner. Press it, cheating the seam slightly to the underside. On most fabrics, we prefer to have the press-on the underside of the collar, but if what you're doing is quite thick and you need the extra layer to hide your seam allowance, then use the press-on side as the face. For this, I'm going to use the press-on side for my under collar. Top stitch and press again, and then baste the 2 layers together about 1/2 inch from your original neckline edge. Pin it onto a dress form how it will be folded to sit on the collar, and then peel the collar up and baste the 2 layers together in the seam allowance underneath. Now the collar no longer wants to lie flat against the table. This is a good thing. Take the band piece that has the stiff stuff attached to it, lay it face up with the collar face up on top of it, and baste the 2 together at the raw edge only between the center front line and the center front line. Now pin the band facing piece to the other side, sandwiching the collar in between. Pin from the stiff stuff side and cheat the seam just slightly to the inside on the facing. Stitch, trim, and clip. You can clip pretty aggressively in that tight curve, but also clip along the edge of the top of the collar. After it's pressed, you would stitch the collar to the shirt at the neck edge, putting all the seam allowance up into the collar, and then top stitch all around. See how nicely this sits against the neck?